Hey everyone, it's great to see you. My name is Mike and I'd like to welcome you aboard the main track today. I've had a pretty productive few weeks out here in the layout room, but I've not been doing a lot of layout video updates. That's because most of what I've been working on is stuff I don't exactly consider exciting and didn't figure you would either. It's things like wiring and bench work. But you know how the hobby goes. There's always going to be something you're working on. Nothing will ever be completely finished. So I figured it was time to take a break from all these little tasks and catch you up to speed here on the HO scale Sedalia subdivision layout. Well, first up, were you able to catch the main track on the Around the Layout podcast? Well, I had an awesome time chatting with Ray Arnott about the layout and some other projects I've got going on, and then also my story about how I came to be a model railroader. You can check out our episode and all the others over on the Around the Layout podcast. I'll put a link at the top of the comment section down below. You'll definitely want to check that out. Well, I figured for this video we would do a little bit of a walk and talk. That way I can bring you along and show you the projects I have done so far and the ones still underway. And I figured it would also give some of our new viewers a chance to see what the entire layout looks like so far. Here in the Sedalia yard are my two new Walthers SW1200 switchers. You may recall I did one of my run and review videos on these a few weeks back, and these things look and sound awesome. Well, they run really great, and I've been putting them to work quite a bit here on the layout. Well, after I put that video out on these units, I had a few of you contact me and let me know you were having some decoder issues with some of them and working with Walthers to get them fixed. Well, thankfully, I've been pretty lucky and haven't had any hiccups like those with these engines. Well, I've acquired some new rolling stock over the months at some train shows. Here's one of my new Walthers coil cars. Well, these have been out for a couple of years at least, and I was looking for a few more for the layout. Well, I was able to find a batch at our train show here in Springfield, and I've got one of these next to the older run of the Katy coil cars Walthers did several years back, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, maybe more. Well, over the years I've upgraded and switched out most of my older, less detailed rolling stock for newer stuff, so this is likely the oldest car I have on my layout. One of the areas I played catch-up on are some signs around the layout. Well, I enjoy working with graphics and have some skills in that area, so I was able to turn out some things like this sign for my Sutherland's lumberyard. Well, I also got caught up on some of my utility poles. Here are some high-voltage transmission poles that follow the Katy main line through Sedalia. Well, as I've mentioned before, utility poles, especially large ones like these, are pretty important visuals for scenes that are sometimes overlooked on layouts. Now, quick note here, I don't plan on adding the wires anytime soon. At this point, I'm not sure if all the work of doing that would be worth what I'd get out of it as far as looks go, but maybe one day I'll get around to tackling that. Well, I've also added a few small trees and bushes along the way, just simple stuff for now, and I'll be adding some larger trees sometime in the near future. Well, check out one of my new Tangent Burlington Northern cabooses. Just like all of Tangent's cars, these things are game changers with a level of detail. Well, I got a couple of the versions with plated over windows, which is how most of BN's cabooses looked by the late 1980s. One thing I like about the lighting effects with these Tangent cabooses is the simplicity. Some of the nicer cabooses out there from other manufacturers include DCC decoders that require some programming. Well, that's nice if you want multiple lighting effects and sounds. But with the Tangent cabooses, you have these little magnetic wands that you use to pass over them to turn the lights on and off. Well, I've heard some guys say they don't like having to keep track of the wands. I personally don't find that to be any more or less of a chore than doing extra decoder programming. All I need are the basic lights, so the system works pretty well for me. Now with the details, these Tangent cars blow my Katy Atlas cabooses out of the water. Well, thankfully, a lot of these BN Way cars, as they're called, can often be found on the back of Katy trains. So it's likely you'll be seeing some more of these showing up on the layout until someone finally comes out with some nice Katy cabooses. Well, I got the signs and more details done on my corner lounge bar here at 16th and Ohio Street. Well, just like the bar, these signs are not exact replicas. I'm going by what things look like today, coupled with what I can recall from when I was a kid. This isn't exactly the type of place anybody would have been photographing back in 1987, so I visited the site a few months back and got plenty of pictures to go by. As you can see, it's not a 100% representation, but my goal here is to get close enough that there's no doubt what the place is supposed to be. Well, coming down the line, I still haven't gotten very far on my MFA grain elevator complex. I've simply been caught up in some other little projects. Well, I pretty much have all the material stocked up. I just need a few evenings to make some headway on it. And over here, I have my TV mounted to the wall so I can watch train videos. Well, coming around the bend, I was also to make some signs for my feed supply business. You can definitely see that brings some more life to the place. Well, I also have my grain loading auger that I picked up at the National Train Show in Texas earlier this summer. It's a 3D printed unit that'll be a simple project for me to paint up and weather. And you can see I have some of the track work done for my spurs. The MFA fertilizer plant and the Fisher's Concrete Company will go right here. Well, I've got the roadbed and track down, but haven't done any weathering or ballasting just yet. Well, I have the fertilizer plant in place right now, and I plan on replacing this one with a more accurate version that looks better. Well, I already have that new Blair Line kit on hand. Well, I'll save this original one and rework it for another town, most likely Clinton, sometime in the future. Moving along, I have the bench work lowered and scenery base down for the segment that'll feature the overpass. You can see I have quite a bit of the bridge done so far. Well, I recently made another trip up to Sedalia to measure the real thing, and I plan on doing an episode on this span sometime in the coming months. Well, continuing around, I have some of the bench work done around this curve. Well, here, the main line will make a complete bend around the backside of the peninsula. This is where I'll have a short countryside scene with a bridge over the Camp Branch Creek, and then farther up the town of Green Ridge. In previous episodes, I showed you the grain elevator I already have completed for the Green Ridge scene, and I have that in pieces sitting on the back of the layout right now. And so that's just some of the projects I've completed here in the recent weeks. Of course, now we're diving into the fall months, and while I'm not the biggest fan of the cold weather, it does, of course, mean lots of long evenings inside, and that's plenty of time to get some of these projects done here on the layout. I'll be sure to keep you posted, as always, as things come along. We'll see you next time right here on the main track.